Thank you, Madam Chairman. I do appreciate the opportunity to sit before you today, and I will put my speed reading cap on here and move right along. Chairman Harper, Minority Chairman Bishop, fellow committee members, thank you for the opportunity to hold this hearing and discuss House Bills 2499 and 2500. As you may know, I have a great interest in the issues that affect children, and I am probably one of the few members to repeatedly request assignment to the Children and Youth Committee. Unfortunately, the plight of our most vulnerable Pennsylvanians, the boys and girls who find themselves involved with the Commonwealth's child welfare system, is often overlooked by the General Assembly. I've introduced the bills we will be discussing today as a part of a larger package of child welfare reforms I introduced with some of my colleagues on the committee, Chairman Harper, Representatives Rosemary Brown, and Tara Toohill. House Bills 2499 and 2500 are intended to increase the level of family engagement in the planning, service delivery, and placement for children and families who are receiving child welfare services. I recognize that effective family engagement practices require sustained effort on behalf of county children and youth agencies, many of whom are already struggling to manage difficult caseloads. However, I firmly believe that if certain practices are properly implemented, we can build networks of support around the children and families who become involved with the child welfare system. These networks of support not only have the potential to create better, more stable outcomes for children, but they also can help taxpayers avoid bearing the burden of costly long-term placements for some children. Before I discuss the bills, I would like to note that Act 80 of 2012, which was enacted after I introduced this legislation, made an important step forward for at-risk children by requiring that relatives within the fifth consanguinity or affinity be notified within 30 days of the removal of a child from the home. As a result of this new law, I'm aware that some minor corrections may be necessary for my legislation comport with the provisions of Act 80. Likewise, I appreciate the feedback of the stakeholders participating in this hearing, and I look forward to working with the stakeholders and the members of the committee to refine House Bills 2499 and 2500 as the legislative process moves forward. House Bill 2499, Family Finding. As you may know, family finding is a child welfare practice that involves ongoing diligent efforts to locate family members, broadly defined as relatives and kin, and engage them in the planning, service delivery, and potentially the placement of the child. This practice allows child welfare agencies to identify those individuals in a child's life who can step in to form the support network for the child and the family. Although a robust support network will benefit families receiving services in the home, the development of this network is particularly important for children who may need to be removed from their homes. My bill will require that counties engage in family finding for a child when the child is accepted for services by the county children and youth agency. Family finding will be conducted at least annually and can be discontinued only if the child's involvement with the agency is terminated, family finding no longer serves the best interest of the child, or family finding poses a safety threat to the child. The bill also contains a requirement that counties notify relatives within the fifth degree of affinity or consanguinity within 30 days when a child has been accepted for services. As I noted, a similar requirement was enacted as part of Act 80, so this provision may now not be necessary. House Bill 2500, Family Conferencing. Family conferencing is a child welfare practice where the County Children and Youth Agency facilitates a meeting where a family, including relatives and kin, develops the safety plan for a child. In other words, family conferencing puts the key members of the family support network around the table to decide how they will work together to meet the needs of the child. My bill would require counties within 5 years to offer the opportunity for a family conferencing to all families receiving services from county children and youth agencies. The Department of Public Welfare would phase in family conferencing over the 5 years so that counties are prepared to comply. Family conferencing would be offered at least annually and at key decision points for the child and the family. The county agency will be responsible for preparing the family for the conference and helping them to identify resources that are available to assist with addressing the safety concerns for the child. At the conference, the family will have the opportunity to develop a safety plan on their own terms, but with the guidance of the County Children and Youth Agency. The agency or court must approve the safety plan to ensure that it attempts to address the concerns for the child. The county agency will then assist the family with the implementation of the plan. This practice makes families responsible for correcting the problems that caused a child to become involved with a children and youth agency, and it gives the individual family members a sense of buy-in and responsibilities for the child's continued well-being. I know that it may be hard work for some counties to sustain long-term commitment to effective family engagement processes, but it is work that must be done. Our child welfare system exists to protect children and preserve families, and the right ways to do these things are not always the easy ways. When a child must be removed from his or her home, it can be a very traumatic experience. Therefore, it is vital that government do everything in its power to engage the extended family and kin and involve them in meeting the needs of the child before we place a child with strangers or in an institution. In situations that may not necessitate the removal of a child, government should be working to build family support networks around the child and his immediate family so they can begin to meet the child's needs. My legislation is intended to put these ideas into statute and would ask for the committee's support and consideration. I would now be happy to answer any questions about the legislation, but I remind the committee that the next two group of presenters are child welfare professionals who will be discussing the practice of family finding and family conferencing in much greater detail. Again, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Representative Moul. I know this is a subject about which you have a great deal of passion.
Yes.
And I also know that while it may be necessary to use words like consanguinity in your testimony, I think the committee and the audience here would benefit by your explaining in as simple terms as possible what your bills are aiming to do.
My bill's family finding is to correct a situation where some children and youth agencies might just place a child and forget a child and not have looked for families to the fifth degree. Blood families, friends, relationships, that sort of thing, so that they can have a buy-in. And the family conferencing is to get all those people who have a relationship or blood relatives with that child into a conference so that they have a buy-in to make sure that they are part of it. There's nothing worse than removing a child that has already been traumatized by a situation that caused the County Children and Youth Agency to become involved in the first place, but then to place him in either in an institution or with total strangers when he could be placed with an aunt, an uncle, a grandparent, or so forth, or even a close family friend that he would feel more secure, or maybe keep him in the same school district, which is another bill that's part of this package. But the whole idea is to keep the child as comfortable and feeling safe as possible and not be forgotten.
All right. Thank you very much. I think that was a good explanation. Chairman Bishop, do you have questions?
Yes. Thank you. And I am delighted to have the opportunity to serve on this committee and talk to people who have the same interests I have. But I do have some questions as to, and I don't see if your bill addressed it, and maybe you can help me. How do we discover the right family finding when we find a family member and say, this is one who is capable of taking this child rather than putting it in the system? What do we hold up for this person? What standard do we hold up for this person to come up to that says this will make a good parent and it's better here than it is with the state?
Chairman Bishop, I'm not sure that I could write something that creates a standard to determine what a good parent or a good situation would be for every single child, because every single child is different. God made us all different. And I do know that children are best served by their families. And I've got to lean heavily on these professionals that are sitting behind me that run the children and youth agencies to make those determinations. I could never do that in statute. That's why they have the educations in this field. I've got to depend on them to answer that question.
Right. So I think it's fair to say your legislation doesn't actually deal with that.
It does not actually say you must place it with grandma, grandpa, aunt, or uncle.
It just says you got to pick family first.
Families first.
And then you need to conference with the family.
And you need to let them have a buy-in to the plan. And that's always important. It's saying this child is part of your family. You need to come up with a plan. What do you people think would be best for this? Because you might have, let me give you an example, a bad example of what could happen. You could, without this involving all the family, as much family as you could get, you might have an aunt and uncle that that could possibly say, yeah, we'll take that child. Maybe they didn't really want the child, but it's a sister's kid, and we'll take that child. Well, aunt and uncle might be an alcoholic that nobody knows about, but yet his brother might say, hey, wait a minute, you don't want to place this child with them because they've got a set of their own problems that they have to deal with. However, we might have a relative here that we all agree would be a great placement, but this one might not be the best. There's no way for a children and youth agency to know those things, but family does. And that's why it's important to get as many people within the family structure as possible to come up with a plan, because the last thing that they're going to want to do, I would say in almost every case, is place a child where the child shouldn't be. And if with Uncle Joe might not be the best, they're going to tell you. And that's why I feel it's important to get the family together to talk it out and have a buy-in. And there might not, in some cases, there might not be much of a family structure, and there might not be any choice but foster care, and those situations are going to happen. But I do know that in my heart, a child is always better with people he's comfortable around and feels secure with than placing a child in a situation that's totally new to him.
I agree with you, and of course I'm signing on with you, but there are questions that I think that we have to dig a little deeper for. That Uncle Joe, that Uncle Charlie may sit with the family and come out great, but deep down, Uncle Joe, Uncle Charlie may have some background somewhere that does not come out, that no one has told about. That is my concern. How do we correct this legislation, which I co-sponsored with you, so that we can protect those with deep, dark secrets in the family that the family doesn't know about or doesn't want to talk about?
Chairman Bishop, the whole idea of getting the family together is because there's absolutely no way for the children and youth agencies to know those deep, dark secrets about Uncle Joe. But the family would.
Or might. Might more than others.
Yeah,
so
they would definitely know, and they might be able to say, hey, Uncle Joe might have volunteered for this, but I know something about Uncle Joe, and we don't want them to go to Uncle Joe. Let's try Aunt Mary over here. And she would be willing, and she's a good person. She doesn't have any deep-seated past. This would be a good placement. And there's no way for they're strapped as it is. There's no way that they could possibly know those things about everyone, but family does.
All right, I see some of our future testifiers have opinions on this too, so I guess we'll hear from them in a little while. Okay, can I move to Representative Samuelson? You had a question also?
Thank you. Just the explanation on the fifth degree of consanguinity. Are we talking about first degree is parents, second degree is grandparents?
It's blood, but yes, you're on the right track. Yes.
So if you go out to the fifth degree, how do you get out to the fifth degree?
I think the fifth degree, you're now stretching into second and third cousins.
Okay. Well, why did you choose fifth degree instead of something like third degree, like you might get
I want
parents,
as many
aunts, uncles?
I want as many people as possible to reach out to that a child could call family.
Is there a requirement? I mean, some families don't even know who their third cousins are. Is there a requirement that the county agency has to sign off on every single possible mathematical fifth degree of consanguinity?
I don't think so. I think a good, valid effort of searching, you're never going to find everyone, especially as global as we are today.
And Executive Director Scarpato has just pointed out to me that Act 80, which is a piece of this,
Right.
uses the same fifth degree. So
Right.
that part's the law. We're going to
It's
find
already
out if
done.
that works after we try it.
Okay, well, I might have a question later on about that, because as I said, if you find the parents, if you find the grandparents, you find the aunts and uncles, and some of the cousins, is the county agency's work done, or do they have to keep looking for those second cousins, third cousins, and I guess even fourth cousins if you're going to the fifth degree?
Well, I think that if they make a valid effort to find everyone and there's just no one there left to find, I want them to look for every possible avenue without spending a year to do it. Obviously, there's got to be some reasonableness to this. However, I do want them to find everybody so that everybody can have a say. I want second cousin Judy, that if she knows something about Uncle Joe, that she could certainly chime in.
And I think you already answered this question about protecting the safety of the child, that this legislation doesn't require a placement with any of those family members. And in fact, I'm reading a section that says the county shall not provide notice if it believes there's a safety threat to a child. So that's on page 4 and 5 of this legislation.
Correct.
So this is just information not required.
And this plan has to be approved either by the judge or the county children and youth agency. It's not like they have the final say. They come up with a plan and they say, this is what we'd like to do with this child. It has to be approved. The plan has to be approved by the professionals.
Thank you. And thank you, Representative Moul. You want to join us up here?
I will certainly do so.
I'd like to
Thank you.
call